not like they're Golden State Warriors.
Good defense by LeBron. Clock dwindling down. Step back.
Jokic will be fine, but he's going to need help.
Brown with a steal. Ahead of the pack. Throws it down.
Giannis takes down Jokic.
And in game one, Jokic touch pass to Gordon.
Going to go with the Golden State Warriors.
Ooh. Why so serious?
I'm going to argue for the Phoenix Suns.
What a pass, and whose baby is that?
I do think that the Los Angeles Lakers,
Jokic just gets it off in time. It's up. Oh!
the Miami Heat, the others, the way they're playing, I'm not going to count them out.
As you said, Mike, I don't know how it happened.
The way they have played this playoffs, I would not count them out.
Active hand. Murray comes up with the steal all by himself. Breakaway. Tells Max Strus, mind your business.
Take that L on the way out.
Hey, you guys know he stat pads, right?
Alley up to Gordon. No call. Well, you got the left some way off. Potter right there.
That's just great, and
Nice steal, Potter. It's blocked. Jokic, oh, Gordon. It's over. At last, the long wait is over. After 47 years, the Denver Nuggets can finally call themselves NBA champions.
To see the Jokic brothers even, you see them back there with their champagne, the swag chains hanging off the fire truck. This is what they've all been waiting for. Take a listen.
So, you put that in your pipe, you smoke it.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it!
Hello, and welcome to After Further Review. Today, we're going to talk about the national narrative on the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic specifically. You'll definitely want to stick around clear to the end because After Further Review was actually on location for that Denver Nuggets parade and rally. And we'll fold that into some of the footage we're going to show you later in the video. This affords us a unique opportunity to discuss the difference between a fan and a spectator. A fan being the root word for fanatic, a fan will digest everything it possibly can in order to be as informed and well-versed as physically possible. A spectator finds what they like and searches out for those things. A spectator in today's NBA era is excited for specific names, and they want those specific names to shoot threes and dunk. They're looking for what essentially equates to the evolution of the highlight era. This has actually been a problem probably since the early 2000s. When you're having a conversation with a sports fan, and then they basically shoot back. If it doesn't include LeBron, Steph, KD, Giannis, Embiid, you can make your own short list. But if it doesn't involve those people, they aren't interested. Because again, they're looking for certain people to do certain things. Guys like Iverson, who I absolutely love, but make no mistake about it, during the early 2000s, there was a huge concentration of fans who really just gravitated towards those spectacular moments, and that's all they seem to care about. Now, a fan watches games. A spectator watches players. And that's a huge distinction, because if you ask a spectator, say a month ago, what they thought of Denver or Sacramento, they're not going to have much to say because they don't watch those teams, because those teams don't have a LeBron, a KD, a Steph, an Embiid, and so on. If you've ever had a conversation with someone, they describe themselves as a LeBron fan, but they're only a Bron fan to the extent that they were fans of Cleveland, then Miami, then Cleveland, then LA. That's a spectator. Someone who follows a player wherever he goes and just talks about that player at all times and never talks about the team he's on or the contributions that other people make around him. If it's all about Bron, as an example, That person's a spectator. This is the reason Denver, as a franchise, has been disrespected, not only this year, but probably for the last 3 years straight. And that's because Denver's not sexy. Sacramento's not sexy. And therefore, people don't watch them. I also love how conveniently minded some NBA fans, I'm just going to continue using the word fans just to keep everybody on the same page, but NBA fans in general, if you were to poll, let's just say 100,000 NBA fans, and ask them how much they've watched the Nuggets, most of them would tell you their games are on too late, it's the time zones, I just don't have time for that. But yet that's the same person that has watched at least 20 Laker games, knowing darn well that the Lakers are an hour behind Denver. The fact of the matter is Denver was the wire-to-wire number one team in the league, whether you want to believe it or not. No one in the East held the number one spot as long as Denver did, and no one in the West ever really challenged Denver for that number one spot. If you're of the belief that the Denver Nuggets just miraculously snuck up on everybody, you weren't paying attention. You went out of your way in your disposable viewing time to look at the games, look at the matchups, look at the schedule, and go, yeah, I'm just not interested in that. A fanatic watches games. You watch games to get a better impression of the entire landscape. Now, you don't have to be a Nuggets fan. You just need to be a basketball fan. A basketball fanatic would have found a way to fit that in. A basketball fanatic in 2023 probably watched the Pacers early before Halliburton went down. A basketball fanatic watched De'Aaron Fox in Sacramento and what they were doing. A basketball fanatic does not keep it to the Warriors, Lakers, Suns, Celtics, and 76ers. That's spectator energy. If you didn't understand through this playoff run how Denver could carve up the Western Conference on their way to the NBA Finals, what were you watching? It's because they weren't sexy enough for you. It's because their roster makeup, for the most part, I'm going to make some generalizations here, is a 7'1" Euro who at present is the best player in the world. Then you have Jamal Murray, who essentially to most people was the fifth most important player on the 2015 Kentucky Wildcats team. And then you surround those two with a host of players that came into this league with hype of their own, who have taken on role-playing positions. Aaron Gordon, Pope, Michael Porter Jr. These were all guys that came into the league with their own hype. And we all thought, hey, maybe this guy could lead a franchise or be the Robin to someone's Batman. Those guys are now in role-playing and support roles. And that's not exciting to you because they don't have a LeBron, because they don't have a Steph, or they don't have a KD. This brings us to the point of good basketball versus star performances. The problem is that the most vocal basketball fans are not actually fans of basketball. They're fans of basketball moments. Most of you will remember what I'm about to reference. There was a rash of young NBA fans, because to my knowledge, I did not see a single person over the age of, let's say, 35 making this claim that if we had a time machine and you could go back and bring prime Larry Bird to this year and have him play against Kevin Durant, whether it be one-on-one or in a team dynamic, that there was a massive sort of groundswell of people saying that KD would cook Larry Bird. I mean, wow. Tell me you're not a basketball fan without telling me you're not a basketball fan. That's lunacy. Matter of fact, I'd go so far to say is, if I could get a time machine, and when I go back to get Larry Bird, I'm not getting 1992 Larry Bird like most of you guys are thinking. I'm going back and I'm getting 86 Larry Bird. And if I can bring 86 Larry Bird back, Larry Bird would embarrass Kevin Durant. Embarrass. Like, it wouldn't be close. Is Kevin Durant a phenomenal scorer? Yes. Can he hit a shot from almost anywhere on the floor? Yes. Would he beat Larry Bird? Hell to the no. I honestly don't know how to say that any more clearly. Kevin Durant's a fantastic player, but he will go down in history as being a fantastic, great, elite player for his era. Kevin Durant is half the player that Larry Bird was. What's fun about this is I'm not actually going to do the whole Larry Bird thing right now. We're actually planning a show where I will be joined by former NBA reporter and former director of Metro Networks Cleveland, who's been a lifelong Celtics fan, Mr. Jeff Sack, and I will let him explain to you even better than I could how ludicrous that is. But that's another show for another time. But the long and short of it is, great star performances or star ball and good or great basketball are not the same thing. But even in the early 2000s, Allen Iverson isoed on the elbow, that's not great basketball. It's exciting, it's interesting, it's fun to watch. It's not good basketball. Game 1 was fun because Allen Iverson went at them and put up incredible numbers, and we all knew he wouldn't be able to hold up for the entire series. But after that Game 1, you got to see the difference between a great player playing great and a well-balanced team that was up to the challenge. And that's not to say that all basketball in the early 2000s was that way, but as a fan, you could watch and know for certain that you saw games that weren't good basketball, but they were fun to watch. And that's a really important distinction when we talk about Denver versus everyone else. Denver brought a balanced approach, a roster that was not built in the super team way. And real quick, just for those that don't know, super team is a buzz term that we've only had for about 10 to 15 years. Now, people are going to argue with me in the comments on that, and they're going to say that, Bird Celtics was a super team, or Magic's Lakers was a super team. No, you're confusing the gravity of the term with what it actually means. Super team as a basketball term was not something we ever heard until the decision. And it wasn't until NBA players started banding together in the offseason and orchestrating moves as if they were the GM. So when LeBron says he's taking his talents to Miami, where they already had Dwayne Wade, and then the two of them convinced Chris Bosh to sign with Miami as well, that's a super team. When the Celtics went from having just Paul Pierce and Twan to then getting Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, one might think that that was a super team as well. It wasn't. Just because a team has an existing roster with 2 to 4 superstar caliber players does not mean it's a super team. Super team is defined by the manner in which the roster is put together. So, if players got together and made a collective decision to all go to one team, that's a super team. If the 2 to 4 star players acquired on one team were acquired purely by the efforts of the general manager and the front office via trade or some sort of free agency signing that doesn't have some sort of shadiness to it, that's not a super team. That's just a really good team with a lot of players. KG's Celtics, not a super team. LeBron's Heat, a super team. When Kevin Durant joined the Warriors became a super team because Steph recruited him. So Steph, Clay, and Draymond, if that's the core, that's not a super team. It's not a super team until players get involved with the movement and signing or acquisition of players. To keep this clear, the current Warriors, not a super team. The Denver Nuggets in no way, shape, or form even flirt with being a super team. They are literally the antithesis of a super team. Jokic, 41st pick overall. He was so unimportant to the draft that if you go back and rewatch that draft, his pick is announced during a Taco Bell commercial. They didn't even have the decency to show it on screen. Jamal Murray, as I mentioned previously, was the 5th most important player on a championship caliber team coming out of college. And every single other player they've acquired via the draft, or it was a free agency signing or trade that made perfect sense for where that player was in their career. When Aaron Gordon came over to the Nuggets, he was not thought as a cornerstone piece of anybody's franchise. He is now, and again, not the super team process. Denver brought balance and a roster building concept that is so far from a super team it's not funny. And because of that, they were able, under Michael Malone, to cultivate that, to build a culture, to get these guys to play together in a way that really doesn't make sense to a super team.
All eyes should be focused on Thursday's draft, where an historic prospect, Victor Wembanyama, will likely go number 1 to the San Antonio Spurs. Now, NBA fans, we can fall into different categories. There are some of us that love to watch basketball and can appreciate the nuances in the game. Nothing wrong with that. There are some of us who like to play GM a little bit and get really excited about the trade deadline or free agency and like to speculate on rumors going around the NBA. Nothing wrong with that. Whatever draws you into the NBA, totally cool with me. But this is just my opinion. Trades and free agency oftentimes are just candy, a quick sugar high. The draft, though, is like a 5-course meal with wine pairings. It takes time to develop players. But even just looking at recent NBA history, think about this year's Denver Nuggets team. Think about their core group of guys. Jokic, drafted by the Nuggets. Jamal Murray, drafted by the Nuggets. Michael Porter Jr., drafted by the Nuggets. Last year's champion, the Golden State Warriors, their big 3, all drafted by the Warriors. Steph, Klay, Draymond. As important as it is for free agency to fill out your roster, and as important as timely trades can be, the real way to team build in the NBA is through the draft. But there's something in the NBA about continuity. And when you build through the draft and you grow together, you build continuity. My good friend Tim Legler on June 13th tweeted out something that I particularly agree with. The recent trend of NBA stars bouncing around trying to mesh together quickly to win a title will potentially help the Nuggets run this back for the foreseeable future. No one can match their combination of top talent combined with continuity. And how did they get that top talent? How did they build that continuity? Through the draft.
In short, Denver's built to handle a super team, and that's exactly what we saw eventually. Doesn't matter who they ran through. They ran through 4 teams built on the super team model. Consider all the teams they had to run through to win this championship. Minnesota, Phoenix, Lakers, and then the Miami Heat. Minnesota had 3 stars. Phoenix had 3 stars. The Lakers had Bron and AD, so 2 is good enough. And then when you get to the Heat, you have playoff Jimmy, Bam, and a bunch of also-ran. Denver was built specifically to be able to handle that with balance and good basketball. Good basketball is not star-dependent. We simply, as fans over time, just allowed ourselves to be romanced by dunks and threes and highlights. We just didn't notice. I'll get off my soapbox about this, but suffice it to say that super teams are bad for the NBA. ESPN, NBA TV, whoever it is that you watch where you get your sports information from, that's not what they would say. It's good for business to talk about super teams. It creates quick and easy narratives that are easy to perpetuate. And because of that, when you put super teams up against non-super teams, the non-super teams are always going to be perceived by those media outlets as being boring or less exciting or not the marquee matchup we were hoping for. But the bottom line is super teams are bad for the NBA. We're going to do a show on that so I can go into more depth on it, but just trust me, super teams are bad for the NBA. The Denver Nuggets are good basketball, but they're not celebrity basketball. The fact that Denver is not celebrity basketball is exactly the root cause as to why the national narrative is treating them like a flyover franchise. But as we found out as recently as Monday, doesn't matter. They won anyway. So in just a moment here, we're going to watch a short cut-up that I put together of the national narrative that I keep referring to. As we go through this in chronological order, you're going to notice that the takes aren't consistent. Some are better than others, and some are just flat out atrocious. But what's very evident is that these national media people, for the most part, were not excited to see Denver do well. And it gets to a point where they were almost forced to talk about it. Now, we're going to hear from Stephen A., we're going to hear from J.J. Redick, we're going to hear from Perk, we're going to hear from Richard Jefferson, as well as a few others. Now, one individual we are going to pay close attention to is Kendrick Perkins. And I'm not trying to run him through the mud or anything, but Kendrick Perkins struggles from a lack of consistency and a propensity to lean on soap opera narratives. You're going to see that at first he's very complimentary of the Denver Nuggets and Jokic, and then almost overnight he just flips the switch. And now all of a sudden everything he said for 3 months doesn't matter. He's basically throwing Jokic aside within the construct of the MVP discussion because Joel Embiid wasn't getting enough run. And that went on for a few weeks, and then we fast forward a little bit, and then all of a sudden Perkins is back on the relative Denver Nuggets bandwagon. And then we're going to get to the part that I think most Denver fans at least were hoping they'd see, and that's the part where it becomes inevitable that Denver is the best team in the NBA, has been the best team in the NBA, and the super team model that they are playing against does not have what it takes to beat them. I could go pull social media posts if you guys really wanted it, but we're just going to assume that you'll trust me on this. I called 5 games the moment the Heat won. I think the moment the Heat beat the Celtics, it was a wrap. I still to this day think that if it was Boston and not Miami, that now we're talking about a series that could have at least gone further. But I, like Tim Legler and a couple other analysts, I don't believe there's a single team in these playoffs that we're going to beat Denver. And the reason is every single team they played or could have played, all except for Miami, follow the super team model. I don't see any scenario where any of those teams beat them 4 times. They had 4 losses all playoffs. No one was close to beating them. Then, once we get through the chronological order of the national media narrative, I am going to show you a selection of highlights just from this season only that, again, should illustrate more of the how than the what. Anybody can look at a Jokic stat line and go, oh, 30 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists. Okay, I know what that means. But you don't fully know what it means until you watch him. Specifically, some of the passing is just next level. He might be the best passer in the NBA at 7'1" and couldn't jump over a $1 bill. But it's important to see how Jokic does what he does so that you can better understand the greatness of him and then by some extension the greatness of this Denver Nuggets team. The long and short of it is quite simply Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world. And it's shocking to me that NBA fans or NBA spectators, a fair amount of analysts, and the viewing public at large has to be sold this idea. Is he the most athletic? No. Is he going to give you highlight dunks? No. He'll dunk it functionally. Nikola Jokic is never going to be in a dunk contest. He's most likely never going to be in a three-point contest. He probably doesn't even enjoy the All-Star festivities as it is. He is not a celebrity, and that's the problem, is that Jokic is not LeBron. He's not KD. He's not Steph. He's not James Harden. There's so many players that he's not. But those are the players we're used to rooting for, and the basketball celebrity is an archetype that we absolutely look for. But when it comes to Jokic, you got to stow all of that, because none of that has any bearing on his skills, talent, ability, or the player he is. That's all ancillary nonsense. So, enjoy this cut up real quick, and we'll be right back.
He scores when he needs to, and he knows how to get everyone else involved.
He's the most skilled center to ever play the game of basketball.
When he passes that ball, his teammates are looking to score. My point is, I'm not trying to devalue anything that Jokic is doing by saying we need to take a harder look at what Giannis is doing.
You want buckets, he's going to give you that. You want rebounds, he's going to give you that. You want him making guys around him better, he's going to give you that. Most importantly, he's going to win you ball games at an extremely high level.
Denver Nuggets, they have the reigning back-to-back MVP who legitimately could go for his third straight. He's flirting with a triple-double. And they've masterfully shown the rest of the league how you build around your superstar players.
I'm going to say the Denver Nuggets, their depth is unquestionable. Jokic is en route to becoming a 3-time MVP.
Guys who have won a third straight MVP include Larry Bird, won a championship that year.
Yes.
Bill Russell won a championship that year. Moses Malone won a championship that year.
Like, who's the favorite in the West right now?
The way they've been playing, the Nuggets should get a lot of respect.
And they have this dude who's as slow as a snail, can't jump onto a curb, and can't be stopped. He's averaging a triple-double, for crying out loud.
Their window is open for a while. Their window's open. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, KCP, all under contract for multiple years.
But I think there's a championship in their future, no doubt about it, and I think their window is long.
I'm just fascinated to hear people talk about Jokic.
I mean, he's an amazing player. There just hasn't been anybody like him. He is as much a unicorn as Kevin Durant is, as Giannis is. I'm sure recency bias is going to come into this. It has to, right? I'm sure there will be people who go, I just can't give it to the same person 3 times, no matter how great they are.
I just don't think there's a lot of buy-in. On some level, I get it. You want to see them have a run in the playoffs. But on another level, I just feel like people don't show them the love they deserve.
I've never seen a disconnect between a guy who wins the MVP that many times in a row and a guy's place in basketball.
He's the MVP. You know what I mean? When the MVP goes out and puts up a triple-double, that means he's impacting the game at a high level across the board. And he's going to set the record this year for most assists per game by a center in NBA history. He's going to, blow it out of the water.
It's just every night you come to expect the triple-double.
Are you sitting here and saying Nikola Jokic is having his numbers padded? Is that what you're saying?
You heard what the hell I said.
Do you agree with Perk on the idea that Jokic is stat padding?
Love Perk. I strongly disagree with this. Nikola Jokic does not care about stats, does not care about averaging a triple-double. Nikola Jokic, I hate to tell everyone, doesn't care about winning an MVP. He cares about winning a championship. The idea that he's stat padding, this is not a guy that cares about stat padding, Perk. And the best argument I can make of why this is such a ludicrous statement, they're 23-0 when he has a triple-double. I know Perk is on this Joel Embiid's the MVP rant. I know he's on this thing. But, let's not make up a narrative about a player that is just so unbased in reality.
I will tell you I completely agree with JJ on this.
Michael Malone said he never fights the game. And I thought that was one of the best descriptions I've ever heard of Jokic. Whatever is needed on a possession, he's just going to make the right play. It's as if to say if you watch another player, it's clear they're more valuable. It's clear they're better. And my question to people that would say that is, what the are you watching? If you're going to make it just about this dumb rings culture thing, I don't know what to tell you, but that's not how we vote on MVP. Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world right now.
Still, we move the goalpost so much every single year for, I believe, guys who we want.
So they have held the lead in first place in the Western Conference for 2 months, and every time he gets a triple-double, he wins. Yes, stat padding goes on. Is he trying to get triple-doubles? Yes, mainly because they win every damn time he does.
Kendrick Perkins appears to play the race card, let's play the clip and then we'll get your thoughts.
When it comes down to guys winning MVP since 1990, it's only 3 guys that won the MVP that wasn't top 10 in scoring. Do you know who those 3 guys were?
Who were they?
Steve Nash, Jokic, and Dirk Nowitzki. What do those guys have in common? I'll let it sit there and marinate. You think about it.
You mean Dilbert Perkins? Because he almost went all the way there, except he didn't have the guts to say it. He just wanted to let it marinate. Kendrick, finish around the hole, brother. You want to go there, go there.
When it comes to MVP voting, 80% of the voters are white American. 20% are other.
What is your immediate response with that there, Charles?
Hey, man. I'm trying to work on my golf game. Are y'all bringing me on radio to talk about stupid stuff?
Who do you feel the MVP is right now?
It ain't close. It's that boy in Denver. That boy in Denver is cold, man. Okay. He's a bad dude. A bad dude. You know what I'm saying? And for him to have his team in first place and the way he's balling, you got to go with him, bro.
I say we disrespect Denver just because, like, you know, they're not the sexy team, whatever, but like they keep through all of that, they still number 1 in the West.
Nikola Jokic is the best center in the universe.
I mean, Jokic is just unstoppable, man. He's a one-man off. Whoa! Hey, now, Jokic got an air horn. Yeah, I'm getting my man Yates to come around.
Stopped winning the MVP. He might win the whole thing this year.
And I know we keep talking about how they're going to stop Jokic, but Jokic needs to figure out how he's going to stop Anthony Davis.
What did he say? Jokic, he's just so special. I mean, to watch this guy, slow as a snail, can't jump onto a curb, wobbles in and out of arenas.
This sounds crazy to say when LeBron James is in any series. Jokic is the best player on the floor now.
You got to be feeling good if you're LA right now.
I'm not going to let you steal the headline. I'm not going to let you make it about the Lakers right now. It's about Denver.
No one on the planet is a better basketball player than Nikola Jokic. If you can argue that, I'm very curious to see your argument.
The beautiful thing about the Joker is he doesn't only have to score in order to be dominant and or effective.
But it starts and ends with Jokic and Murray. If they play the way they're capable of playing, Denver's going to win the championship.
In whatever order you want to take them, Sacramento and Denver. And people just had not watched them, not paid close attention, except if you're a basketball fanatic.
Who's the best player in basketball at this moment? I would say Jokic.
It's between him and Jimmy Butler.
Yes.
It's damn near close, and I'm not ready to give anybody the crown yet.
Yeah, let's see it.
I want to see it finished.
It was January the 11th when Tim said the following. What are you prepared to say right now on this television show that you have never said before, Tim Legler?
The Denver Nuggets can get to the finals, and I've never felt that way about them to this point.
Well, there you go. And now they are there, and they've taken a pretty impressive path to here. Does it matter who they play?
That is how I feel, Scott. I think Denver Nuggets are going to win a championship this year, regardless of who they play.
Jokic is brilliant. People have underestimated this guy his entire career.
It felt like a lot of people were sleeping on you. The first take debacle happened.
Yeah, I could genuinely say, and I don't know if there's another basketball player in the NBA that would be so nonchalant about that type of stuff as Nikola, but I can genuinely say, like, he didn't care.
If I said to you, Nikola Jokic is the best basketball player in the world, what would you say?
I'd say, duh. It's very, very obvious.
Every comparison is to an all-time great. Every time they put up some graphic, Tim Duncan, Magic, Wilt, it's just, you're talking about people in the Hall, not just in the Hall of Fame, but at the top of the pyramid.
Who's going to win the NBA championship?
I'm going to have to go with the Denver Nuggets.
The Miami have no answer for Jokic, and that's not to say to imply that somebody else does. But they seem relatively helpless.
Every time you have doubted the Miami Heat, they seem to have responded. They're at home. What are the chances that you give the Heat evening up the series?
Very
very little.
Really?
Yeah, very little chance.
This was kind of like the way Miami wins the game. They did it with toughness. They did it with some real tenacious defense. Just an all-around great team effort at both ends.
The Joker has to do is continue to do what he's done the entire playoffs, and that's take what the defense gives him. When they're going to double team him, he's going to find the open guy. When they try to guard him one-on-one, he's going to score.
Denver wasn't having it. Jokic with 28 and 16. He was Finals MVP. First player in history. Led the postseason. All players in the postseason in points, rebounds, and assists.
And now you are an NBA champion, Nikola. How does that feel?
It's good. It's good. The job is done. We can go home now.
And the moment lands emotionally as Murray, Jokic, and Jokic's brothers tossed around Michael Malone as they did after they swept the Lakers. But this time, the NBA champions are the Denver Nuggets, the MVP of the Finals, Nikola Jokic. Stephen A., the Nuggets were the 1 seed. They never faced elimination, and they win a title that Eric Spoelstra said they deserved. They were the best team by a lot.
Well, you'll remember it as the ascension of Nikola Jokic, who's the best player in the game, the best center in basketball. There's no debating that any longer. You can build and develop chemistry and cohesiveness together, and you can capture a championship that way, as they would say, the old-fashioned way.
I don't think anybody would have beat them. I really believe that.
So you don't buy this whole thing about how they had the easiest run of all time and it's a fake
we should address that right now. Not willing to put it up as an all-time great run is just the most asinine statement when Jokic literally was like the first to do this, the first to do this, the second most ever. Come on, man. Like, what are we doing? He had played against Giannis or Embiid or beat the Celtics. Hey, guess what? Those teams weren't good enough. 2 of them lost to the Heat, and 1 of them couldn't get past the Celtics and couldn't close them out. The teams weren't good enough. How is that a knock on Jokic?
So Kevin Durant and LeBron James and Anthony Davis don't count.
In the 4 rounds, they went against players that had combined for 22 all-defensive and Defensive Player of the Year awards, the most all-time, and they went against 85 combined all-star appearances in the 4 rounds, the most all-time.
Got to get Jokic going, but they're doubling him every time. Cross-court sling, and Casey.
She double cut, and see, he even gives himself a better angle. The 9th assist on a little drop pass.
As good as it gets. Base. Jokic underneath the Porter. Handy. Wow. 15 seconds. Murray to Jokic. Jokic under to Gordon. KC's defense pretty tight here. Jokic hook pass under to Gordon.
Had just an okay night until the 4th quarter, and he has just exploded.
Pass to Jokic, collects it behind the back.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just to be able to catch the ball. Most centers aren't even catching that ball. That's going out of bounds.
Do it. Jokic to beat the clock. Fires a 3. Got it!
Get all the white jerseys around here. Beautiful. Again, behind the back.
Kispert turn, shoot, short. Another rebound. Jokic has a double-double. His 18th on the... what a pass to KCP!
Jokic saw this play before he even caught the ball, so it was just a matter of between the legs is incredible. And here a little hook pass to Gordon.
Jokic falling away. Got it! Jokic coming in. Over the shoulder to Gordon. What?
Here comes Rudy. There goes here.
Jamal Murray to Jokic. Jokic backs up for the win. Yes!
This guy is unbelievable. This is 7-footer, folks.
They close out. Good defense. Jokic the rebound. He's got Brown out there. Touchdown, Nuggets.
I don't know if everybody realizes the difficulty in a pass like this and the accuracy.
Absolutely. Nikola Jokic has come back in. Dallas on a 12-1 scoring run. McDermott's season high is 23. Murray, yes!
Team of Jeff Green and Nikola Jokic, easier to defend.
Finney Smith is everywhere. Jokic, another rebound, ahead to Brown. And Brown.
You are kidding with the delivery on this pass. Nikola Jokic, instant turn, knows Christian Brown, can see him out of the corner of his eye. He might have an advantage if he takes off.
Tecchio, Nuggets come away. They got a long pass to Jokic, behind the back to Porter. Nicely done.
The funny thing, and Perk mentions it early on in the whole Jokic isn't the MVP narrative, is that Nikola Jokic isn't in the top 10 in scoring. I'd say this to Perk if he was in the room. Get over it. Stop focusing on who's the top scorer. Scoring is only part of the equation. And if we throw out advanced stats, the equation is like 10 factors long. Scoring is one of those. The top 25 NBA scorers average over 20 a game. The top 12 to 13 average over 25 a game. So as long as the player in question averages over 20 points a game, preferably 25 points a game, they're in the conversation. We're done with points. It's over now. We move on to the next thing. And in the case of these two, Jimmy Butler is averaging 7 rebounds a game in the playoffs. Jokic is averaging 14. Double. In these playoffs, Jimmy Butler has averaged 5 assists per game. Jokic has averaged almost 10. Double. Now, Jimmy is a decent free throw shooter. He is a above average 3-point shooter. And he has a typical field goal percentage for a wing. Jokic is averaging almost 60% from the floor. He's averaging over 40% from 3. And he still has, I believe, 83 or 88% free throw percentage. So at no point, none, is Jimmy Butler on the same page, same playing field, same level as Jokic. And when we talk center to center, oh, get out of here. Bam's a nice player, but Bam might be the 10th or 12th best center in the NBA. Jokic is the best center in the NBA and the best player in the NBA. So this is not a fair matchup no matter how you slice it. But darn, did the NBA media try to push that agenda. So this next one is something that's really bothered me for quite a while, and it's not Jokic specific. I mean, it affects him, but it's not Jokic specific. But I'm gonna mention Jokic along with one other player that is a sports celebrity who suffers from the same unfair treatment. Jokic and LeBron are downgraded because they have more overall success than the people they're being compared to. In LeBron's case, he has now been to 12 conference finals series. There are great players in the NBA who are lucky to get to 1. Jokic has been to the conference finals 3 times now. And what do they say about both? You know, LeBron only won 4 times of those 12. Or Jokic has been 3 times but never been to the finals until this year. When did we decide consistency is a downgrade? When did we decide that being that dude consistently, always making deep playoff runs, doesn't count? We absolutely, as a sports watching fan base, I don't care who you follow, I don't care what players you like, what team you like, we have absolutely got to get rid of this ludicrous idea that if it's not perfect, it's trash. And you know what I'm talking about. Anytime we're talking about sports, movies, TV shows, whatever it is that we get our entertainment from, we are living in an era where people will think to themselves, if you are not the apex best there is, you're garbage. I don't know when that started, but it needs to stop. Jokic took a Denver Nuggets team that did not have Jamal Murray, that Michael Porter Jr. was not at the level of development he's at currently. They didn't have a bulk of what they needed to make a run, but he still gets them to the Western Conference Finals. And the fact that he gets downgraded for doing all of that, but not making the finals, is ridiculous. It's just as ridiculous as people saying 6-0 to LeBron. So the next big question is, what is Jokic? And I mean that plainly. What is it that makes up what Jokic is as a player? We almost always come back to the same concept, and that is player comps, right? How does he compare to another player? And I think the hard thing with Jokic is there is no one person that he translates to, because we've never seen this. We've never seen a center who can lead the entire playoffs in assists. So you got to dig a little deeper and kind of think outside the box a little bit. We could come up with a number of players that all make one big amalgamation and it equals Jokic. But just to keep things real simple, I'm just going to throw out two names. And while it's going to sound absurd, when you really step back from it, it's going to make perfect sense. Jokic is Magic Johnson and Larry Bird in a 7'1", 280-pound frame. Now, I'm not suggesting that Jokic is better than Magic and better than Bird or better than both combined. I'm not saying that. I'm saying those two gentlemen's games are represented in Jokic. I've not seen a non-point guard, maybe ever, pass the way Jokic does, which brings in the Magic Johnson aspect. But as a shooter, having the touch, being able to just know where the rim is, wherever he is on the floor, and being able to put the ball in position to just drop in there. That's Larry Bird. Now, toughness, also Larry Bird. In the highlight section, I'm sure you noticed, he gets hit a lot. Doesn't seem to faze him. If he had a smaller frame, a guy like Jokic would probably sacrifice his body a lot like Larry did. So, those two guys together get us the closest we're going to get to saying this equals Jokic. Now, the scary thing about Jokic in particular, and most players go through this, they start to attack the offseason differently. For years and years, LeBron would actually go into every offseason and pick one thing to work on. The scary thing about Joker is, what if he's about to enter that realm of his career and he decides to dedicate himself to being a legit defender? Jokic had to dramatically change his body, his approach to the game, and refine a lot of things. So this would not be foreign to him. But if Jokic decides to be a good defender and actually learns those skills, then this whole conversation just gets blown out of the water. It's not even close who the best player in the world would be. Because whether you want to talk about KD or Steph or really anybody, none of them have the balance of their game. They all can score in volume. So what? Everybody at the top can. And then after that, Steph's got unbelievable shooting ability, best three-point shooter we've probably ever seen. KD can hit a shot from anywhere on the floor. And even both of those guys can put up legitimate assists and rebound numbers. 25, 12, and 10. Just as the stats show, that's impressive. But then when you go back, as we did, and watch Jokic and you see how he does it, it's just different. So Jokic is the best player in the world, whether it's sexy or not. All right, let's talk about Kendrick Perkins' elephant in the room. He maintains that players stat pad all the time. And I would agree that a large percentage of the NBA players are fully well aware of where they are in the game, in the week, in the month, in the season. They know their number. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that guys don't stay in games they don't need to stay in to get that one last rebound, or that guys aren't looking for that one last assist to get a triple-double. They absolutely are. The difference, though, is that Jokic doesn't care. Most of that, the vast majority of that, is all contract related. It's all, I want my roses. And that's totally fine. Jokic doesn't give a darn about anybody's roses, especially his. So when Jokic is in the game and he's got 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists, yeah, he might stat pad to get to that. But the guy's got 100 triple-doubles. It's not like it's a rare occurrence. It's not like this is Ricky Davis throwing the ball off the wrong rim so that he can get his triple-double. Jokic doesn't have a shred of Ricky Davis in him. So let's just throw that away. If there's stat padding, the stat padding is done because situationally it gives his team the best chance to win. So that whole narrative about Perk saying that he's stat padding just so he can win the MVP doesn't make sense because Jokic didn't want to win the MVP. He didn't want to win it the last 2 years. We're talking about the MVP because it matters to us. It doesn't matter to Jokic. If Jokic could go, and let's just say for the sake of conversation, if Jokic could average 8 points a game, but 12 rebounds and 10 assists a game, and by doing so, guarantee that his team would go undefeated, guess what? Jokic ain't scoring more than 10 points a game. Whether you're hearing it from me, Michael Malone, Jokic himself, his other teammates, it is apparent that Jokic cares about winning. He wants team success, and therefore all this other stuff is getting in the way of him just working on his game and having team success. He doesn't care about MVPs. He doesn't care about a scoring title or a rebound. He doesn't care about any of that. So while Perk's not wrong that NBA players stat pad, the stat padding only matters because the motivation of the player is to say, I need these stats so that I can blank in the future. Jokic doesn't care about that. So Perk can scream all he wants about stat padding and how what he's doing is, I don't know, somehow not fair to Joel Embiid. Give me a break. There are certain aspects to this national narrative that we all just should have thrown out, the analysts included. And the moment that Perk found himself going down the stat padding route, not to mention the fact that he's suggesting that there's some sort of conspiracy theory agenda against people that dominate the NBA, is also kind of laughable. Maybe it's just me. I can't fathom I'm alone in this, but we'll go for it anyway. Joel Embiid averaged 30 points a game, 11 rebounds a game, and 3 assists a game. Jokic averaged 25 points a game, 12 rebounds a game, and 2/10 of an assist away from 10 assists a game. So call it 30, 11, and 4 against 25, 12, and 10. In what world is that Joel Embiid stat line noticeably better than the Jokic stat line? And if we were to get into percentages, it's also not going to favor Embiid. So, yeah, go ahead and put me in the category of people that thinks Nikola Jokic should have won his 3rd straight league MVP. Not that he would have cared. And that's really just a comment for Perkins. I mean, Joel Embiid, enjoy your league MVP. I'm not trying to take it away from you. But the notion that it was so asinine that the NBA voters would have voted for Nikola Jokic for a 3rd year in a row, it's not a crazy idea. He's got the numbers, and as we saw, the eye tests. Now, don't get me wrong, Embiid's a phenomenal player, but he's still kind of just your typical big. He doesn't impact the game from a passing standpoint. His shooting percentages aren't so good that they're undeniable. So where this whole idea came from, that the season belonged to Embiid, I don't get. And you absolutely can point out the one head-to-head matchup where Embiid did come out on top over Jokic. But that's one aspect. And once the MVP voting was over and it was awarded to Embiid, that's great. Then we move on, and now it's June, and we're looking back on, you really feel good about that decision? This Philly didn't last very long. And Jokic is standing with his Nuggets teammates at a victory parade. One thing that Perk's not wrong about is that they keep moving the goalpost on the MVP discussion. You know, it used to be just who's the most valuable to their team. It's almost like the stats didn't matter that much. Then it changed to, they have to be the best player in the league. There was an entire stretch where MVP might as well have just been translated to most exciting player. Valuable wasn't part of the equation. But that's where we need to get back to, is some combination of meeting certain statistical benchmarks, but then being looked at as how valuable you are to said team. Sometimes it'll be the big star, right? A lot of times, LeBron James probably should have won 5 or 6 MVPs in a row because he was literally the best player in the world. And he absolutely meant that much to his team. He was the most valuable player in the league. Now, most recently, it feels like, according to Perkins and some others, you got to be top 10 in scoring. Your team has to have good playoff seeding. There's so many criteria that I kind of agree with him. We don't know what the criteria for most valuable player is. And what we really need to do is get back to the valuable part of it. Denver, they don't have to win any one way. The Miami Heat team was only going to win this series if one thing was true, and they were unrealistically hot from 3. If they're not shooting the 3 ball well, they got no chance in beating the Nuggets. But if the shoe is on the other foot, it doesn't hold up. Denver does not have to beat you by Nikola Jokic scoring 40 points. They don't have to beat you with Jamal Murray hitting 80% from 3 one night. They don't have to beat you by having Aaron Gordon go off. But they can. They're built to sustain these waves and to take whatever attack comes with them. I can't think of another team in the last decade that's better at letting the game come to them than Denver. So yeah, Miami was doomed from the start. The Denver Nuggets, no matter who you are, where you live, or who you root for, the Denver Nuggets in 2022, 2023, and beyond are good for the NBA. I'm not saying you got to root for them, but in the back of your mind, when you hear Denver beat a good team next year, or string together a bunch of wins, or you hear an analyst talk about how they're playing more than what they're doing, it's going to become apparent, and in the back of your mind, you should like that. Maybe not to the point that they prevent your team from having success. The more balanced and non-super team roster building process teams do well, the better it'll be for the NBA. Success from a team like Denver, like Sacramento, is good for the NBA, and it will swing the pendulum in the other direction. If you've been sleeping on the Denver Nuggets, it's time to wake up. Seriously. I don't know how more plainly to put it, and I don't care who you're a fan of. But if you're a basketball fan, going back to the beginning of the video, you should want the Denver Nuggets to have some level of sustained success because it means good things for everybody else. Notwithstanding Michael Malone's optimism, the Denver Nuggets are absolutely built to make a run here. This is not a one-and-done situation. Now, I'm not guaranteeing they'll be a 2-time champion or a 3-time champion or anything like that. But you're absolutely crazy if you think the Denver Nuggets, as constituted today, they are built to be in the title conversation for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, I absolutely do not expect a Chicago Bulls-like three-peat type scenario, but I think a Golden State Warriors type dynasty is absolutely on the table. To go and win, say, 3 rings in 5 years is absolutely something that could realistically happen. The Denver Nuggets and their success are good for the NBA. And this notion that everyone needs a super team to be relevant, it needs to die. I hate to say it this way, but I'm gonna. Post-NBA Finals championship, it is far past the point where the NBA fan base at large, regardless of who you root for, needs to start putting some respect on the Denver Nuggets Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Malone, because this Denver Nuggets team is not going anywhere anytime soon. And unless Jokic pulls a Jim Brown and just walks away at the apex of his career, I can't fathom a scenario where they aren't in the title conversation for the next 3 to 5 years. This season and this playoff run was different, and I hope most of you were paying attention. I hope most of you watched. If not, it's not too late to go order NBA League Pass, and you can go back and watch all the games. The Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic specifically were everything the NBA needed in 2023. And even though the Denver Nuggets are not my number one team, I'm hoping for their success because their success makes for a better NBA. I want to thank you, as always, for checking out this video. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. You have a wonderful day. It was 7:30 in the morning, downtown Denver, getting ready for this parade. I really don't know why people need to be up this early.
If you're looking forward to a parade coming up in Denver.
When is parade? When is parade?
Thursday.
No. I need to go home. Hello. Okay. You know that I told that I don't want to stay on parade, but I want to stay on parade. This is the best.